Hi friends. Please subscribe and help me get my first 1,000 subscribers. It's one click for you, but for me it's a huge encouragement and motivation. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's go. Anna sat in the kitchen, holding the cold cup of coffee to her lips. All around her were the sounds of the evening city. The noise of engines, distant conversations, the rhythmic hum of footsteps on the sidewalk. But to her, all these sounds became a muffled background. She could not tear herself away from her own thoughts. They played in her head like a broken record, reminding her that her life had stopped right where it had been a few years ago. John, her boyfriend, was late for work as usual. He was working hard, trying to save up for the wedding they had put off for years due to financial difficulties. Anna remembered how they had once sat on this same kitchen chair, discussing what kind of house they would have and what kind of family celebrations they would have. Their dreams had seemed so real, almost tangible. But as time passed, those plans became a vague abstraction, barely discernible behind the endless reports of bills, daily worries, and unresolved problems. Her friends were getting married one by one, celebrating in white dresses and posting honeymoon photos on social media. Anna clutched her phone in her hands as she leafed through these photos, feeling a muffled resentment and disappointment brewing in her chest. Every conversation they had about weddings, every snapshot of rings sparkling in the sun, reminded her that her own dreams were still out of reach. Today was a particularly difficult day. Another friend sent a text. "I hope you and John take a step forward soon too. We are all looking forward to your celebration." Anna sadly closed the chat room and set her phone on the table, wrapping her arms around her head tiredly. She felt that she was drowning in the swirl of thoughts about her unhappiness and missed opportunities. Remembering how recently she and John had argued about whether to spend the money on a new renovation or to put it aside for a deposit for the wedding, Anna sighed. The arguments, the accumulated recriminations, the weight of the financial burden, all made her feel like life was passing her by and she was stuck in a place she did not want to be. Despair was coming up on her with renewed vigor. She went to her bedroom and opened her dresser drawer, taking out an old photo album. A note with a phone number written on the crumpled edges fell casually between the pages of the album. Mike, her ex, the one with whom the relationship had once been vibrant but full of uncertainty. They'd broken up because Mike did not want stability, the same stability John had tried to build over the years. Anna ran her fingers slowly across the paper, feeling something vague rising inside, a mixture of longing and excitement. For a long time she struggled with thoughts of him, reminded herself that she and Mike were a past that should not return. But at this moment, she wanted something else, to break free from the shackles of routine, to forget her worries and feel alive. With trembling fingers, she picked up her phone and opened the old chat room. The blank screen blinked, reminding her of the time that had passed since their last conversation. She stared at the empty message box for a long moment, hesitant to begin. Her heart beat faster, as if trying to warn her that she was about to cross the line. "Hey, long time no see. How are you?" she typed, not even realizing she was writing. The seconds dragged agonizingly slow as she waited for a reply, feeling the tension growing inside her. The screen flickered and a notification appeared. Typing. "Hey Anna. How unexpected. I'm fine, how about you?" The message came almost instantly, as if Mike had been waiting for her call all along. Anna's heart clenched in her chest when she saw the familiar name and the short reply on the screen. Her fingers trembled, but the excitement consumed her so much that her fear receded for a moment. She felt like she was disrupting something important, breaking the foundations she herself had spent years building. "Things are fine, just thought I'd check in to see how you redoing." "I hope all is well," she replied, trying not to give the words too much importance. Her heart was pounding so hard it seemed its pounding could be heard across the room. The pause in the correspondence lasted longer than she would have liked. Anna reached for her coffee cup, which had already cooled completely, and took a small sip, feeling the bitter taste on her tongue. She hoped the message would remain just a burst of emotion, a momentary weakness easily forgotten. But her phone blinked again, and Mike's words made her freeze. I wonder what made you remember me after all these years. Do you still live in the city? Maybe we could see each other like we used to? His sentence sounded simple, but there was an underlying ambiguity that made her heart skip a beat. Anna froze, scrutinizing the phone screen. The meeting. She could have said no. She could have left the message unanswered and put the phone back in the drawer as if nothing had happened. It would have been the right choice, and she knew it. But instead, her fingers quickly typed, "Why not?" The old coffee shop where they once met had not changed. The interior, the shelves of books, the brown couches, and the dimmed lights made her nostalgic. When Mike walked in, she noticed immediately that he had changed. His face had new wrinkles, and his eyes were a little tired, but they were still the same reckless and inviting. "Hello, Anna," he said, and his voice, deeper than before, brought her back to the past again. He sat down across from her, and their gazes met. The silence between them was filled with memories that did not need words. "Hi, Mike," she replied, feeling her voice shake. She could not decide whether she felt joy, excitement, or fear. "So you got bored, then?" His smile was barely perceptible, but you could sense the mockery in it. Anna recoiled as if his words were barbs. She had not expected such directness, but she knew it was useless to hide her intentions in front of Mike. He'd always been able to read her mind, to find her weaknesses and cling to them. "I just wanted to see how you were doing," she said, shrugging and avoiding his gaze. In truth, she wanted more than that. A sense of adventure, a break from routine, but to admit it would be too much. "Well, let's make this an interesting evening," he suggested, nodding toward the bar, where she could order something stronger than coffee. Anna hesitated, but a long-forgotten feeling of freedom flared up in her soul. She nodded, letting the moment take hold of her, closing her eyes to what was beyond the confines of this small cafe. When she got home, the clock read past midnight. The apartment was dark, quieter than ever. John was already asleep in their shared bedroom, not even aware that his life had changed that night. Anna walked cautiously down the hall, trying not to make any noise, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring into the darkness. Guilt washed over her, making her think of the consequences, but it was followed by something else, a strange sense of relief. The morning after her encounter with Mike had been rough. Anna woke up with a thudding headache and the feeling that she'd done something irreparable. The light shining through the half-open curtains seemed too bright, burning away the remnants of sleep and forcing her to face reality. John had already left for work, leaving a note on the kitchen table with the usual good day's wishes. He'd always been so thoughtful, even in the little things that might have escaped notice. But now these simple tokens of his affection reminded her of how she had betrayed his trust. Anna tried to convince herself that seeing Mike was just a momentary weakness, an episode that would not happen again. She rolled John's note in the palm of her hand and felt a wave of nausea rise inside her. The prick of guilt became palpable, almost physical. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, and tried to banish thoughts of last night. But the memories of his voice, of sitting in the old coffee shop discussing random trivia, came back with renewed vigor. Despite her best efforts to forget what had happened, Anna's cell phone, lying on the table, blinked, catching her attention. A new message from Mike. "Hey, thanks for yesterday. It was good to see you. Maybe we can do it again?" At that moment, her heart raced and the blood rushed to her face. At first she wanted to ignore the message, erase it and close this chapter of her life forever. But as she read the text over and over, she felt a wave of excitement and contradictory pleasure. Anna ran her finger across the screen, as if hesitating, and wrote, "Maybe." That short message seemed to her like a boundary beyond which the unknown stretched. Her fingers trembled as she sent it, and images of John flashed through her mind, his open, kind smile she saw every morning, his arms around her after a hard day. But her inner conflict was pulling her in the other direction, toward memories of Mike and the freedom she'd once experienced with him. A few days passed. Anna tried to act normal with John, but every time he entered the room, she felt her heart skip a traitorous beat. He noticed her absent-mindedness, her odd looks, and her barely concealed tension. One evening, as they sat on the couch watching a movie, John suddenly turned to her and, frowning slightly, asked, "Is everything okay? You've been acting kind of weird lately." Anna tried to smile, forcing herself to look him straight in the eye. "Yeah, just a little tired," she answered, avoiding his scrutiny. John was silent for a long moment, and then nodded, clearly not satisfied with her answer, but he did not insist. Anna felt like her world was about to fall apart. She had to stop before it was too late, but the next day she found herself on Mike's doorstep again. Mike greeted her with a smile that read more than just a greeting. There was a mixture of interest and boldness in his eyes that made Anna's heart sink. He held the door open a little longer than necessary, as if giving her a chance to change her mind. But Anna stepped inside, feeling the inner voice screaming that this was a mistake growing quieter. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked, as if challenging her. Anna did not respond with words. Her gaze was more eloquent than any answer. She stepped closer to him, smelling his scent, feeling the heat emanating from his body. In that moment, she realized that her world had been going downhill for a long time, and it was useless to stop now. After that night, seeing Mike became a regular occurrence. Anna found excuses to stay late at work, avoided unnecessary conversations with John, who, despite his attempts not to show concern, was beginning to lose patience. He could see her mood changing, her smile becoming strained and her answers becoming one-word answers. One day when she came home later than usual, John was waiting for her in the kitchen. His eyes were full of questions and hidden resentment. He was holding her bag, which he had accidentally dropped from a chair while packing her things. Anna immediately noticed that one of the condom packs she'd forgotten to put back after her meetings with Mike was lying next to it. "What's that?" John's voice was quiet, but he could hear the metal in it. Anna felt her heart clench and freeze. Everything inside her was gripped by fear, that cold, paralyzing fear that made the world around her begin to fade. She stood there, unable to utter a word, feeling a rumbling in her head and goosebumps run up her spine. John stared at her without averting his gaze, his jaw tense and his hands clenched into fists. He rarely showed such emotion, and it only added to her horror. "Anna?" he repeated, and there was a quiet, barely perceptible tremor in his voice. He did not shout, did not raise his voice, but that made the question sound even scarier. It's just old. Anna tried to find some explanation, but realized her words sounded ridiculous. John knew her too well to believe in lame excuses. She noticed his eyes widen and something like realization flashed in them. "Old?" he interjected, his voice almost a whisper. "Anna, do not do this. Just tell the truth." His words cut through the silence like a knife, and Anna realized there was no point in lying anymore. The world she'd been trying to keep was beginning to crumble right in front of her, stone by stone. "John, She lowered her gaze, unable to bear his stare. He was silent, waiting for an answer, and she felt her legs grow weak. She knew that now, at this very moment, every word she said could ruin their lives forever. "You cheated on me, did not you?" he said, and there was no rage or anger in his voice, only weariness and bitterness. It was not a question, but a statement, confirmed by everything he'd seen and felt in the past weeks. Anna nodded, unable to find the words to explain what she had done. Tears came to her eyes, and she struggled to keep from bursting into tears right away. John stood still for a long moment, as if struggling with something inside him, then sighed heavily, put the bag on the table and looked away. "Got it," was all he said, and he turned and walked slowly back to the bedroom. Anna stared after him, not knowing what to do, how to fix the situation. She followed him, but stopped at the door, watching as he silently packed his bag. "John, please." Her voice was full of desperation, but he did not answer. He continued to put his things away. His movements were slow and almost mechanical, as if he did not want to rush lest he break down right in front of her. When he was done, he turned to her. There was a pain in his eyes that she had never seen before. "We redone, Anna," he said quietly, and his voice was firm, final. "I thought I knew you, but it turns out I was wrong." He walked past her without touching her, without looking back, and out the door, which closed with a quiet click. That sound echoed in her heart with a hum of emptiness that filled her entire being. Anna was left standing in the empty apartment, listening to the silence that had suddenly become unbearably loud. In that moment, she realized that the elusive bridge that bound their lives together was broken forever. After John left, the apartment they shared for 5 years seemed vastly empty to Anna. Her footsteps echoed off the walls, as if each room were a reminder of what she had destroyed. Anna spent evenings sitting in semi-darkness, wrapping her arms around her shoulders as if hoping to hold on to the remnants of her former warmth. But instead, the silence that grew each day became her constant companion. At work, her colleagues noticed how Anna was gradually turning into a shadow of herself. Her once confident movements became awkward, and her smile disappeared, giving way to a blank stare. She mechanically performed her duties, barely engaging in conversation, avoiding questions and trying not to attract attention. One day her superior, Mrs. White, invited her into her office. "Anna," she began with a soft but insistent tone, "are you all right? I've noticed that you have not been the same lately." Anna nodded, trying to put on a tired but confident smile. "I'm fine, just a little stressed," she said. But the words sounded so hollow that even she felt uncomfortable. Mrs. White gave her a studied look, but did not ask any further questions. After this conversation, however, Anna felt that her colleagues began to look at her with cautious curiosity and slight concern. Her inner world was disintegrating, and she realized that it was starting to go beyond her personal space. But the hardest challenge for her was seeing John's life continue to go on as it was. On social media, she would randomly come across pictures of him looking cheerful and even happy. In one photo, he was standing with friends at a soccer game, laughing and holding a glass of beer. In another, he was eating lunch at a restaurant, still wearing the same friendly smile that had once made her feel like the luckiest woman in the world. Anna agonizingly replayed these pictures in her head, convincing herself that his happiness was fake, that there was pain behind the screen of fun. But then a new wave of shame and guilt swept over her. She realized that now John had a chance at a better life, free from her betrayal. The only person Anna could share her thoughts with was Mike. He became her harbor of sorts, a place she escaped from feeling empty. But every time they met, she felt that their meetings were not comforting. They were just a way to plug the gaping wound that grew deeper every day. "Anna, you getting too serious," Mike said one day as they sat in his apartment, looking out the panoramic window at the city at night. He turned to her, frowning slightly, as if he did not recognize her. "I miss the you that laughed and joked." His words pierced her, but not because he was right, but because she herself no longer knew where to find that old self. Her life was now divided into before and after, before the affair and after the exposure. She struggled to keep herself from crying as she looked at Mike, who was part of her mistake, but did not feel the devastating guilt that consumed her. "I'm just tired," she said quietly, turning away from his scrutinizing gaze. She wanted to scream at him about how hurt she was, how agonizing it was to live with the thought that she ruined her life and betrayed someone who loved her. But Mike was not someone who understood her pain. To him it was just meetings, fun, a memory of his youth. The days dragged on, and every morning Anna got out of bed with an effort, as if her body refused to cooperate. She tried to concentrate on work, on her daily routine, but the thought of John never left her. She was beginning to ask herself why he had not contacted her, why his life seemed so full without her. She wanted to hear his voice, to see how he reacted to her presence. But John disappeared from her life like a shadow, leaving behind only mute questions. One evening, as Anna drove home, a haunting thought entered her head. She must see him, even if from afar. At first she rejected the idea, realizing that it was wrong and that she could only make things worse. But with each passing day, the thought gained strength, becoming an obsession. Anna could not shake the thought that she needed to see John. The feeling of his total absence from her life, his silence and outward calmness tormented her day and night. She tried to fight the urge, convinced herself that she deserved to suffer, that the best thing to do was to leave him alone. But guilt and agonizing curiosity eventually took over. One evening, wrapped in her coat and hood, she walked outside and headed toward the house where John now lived. She knew the address. A mutual friend of theirs had casually mentioned it in conversation when they run into each other at the grocery store. The drive to his house seemed long and cold, and memories swarmed in Anna's mind. Their trips together, candlelit dinners and evening walks as they laughed without thinking about the future. She stopped in front of the house and, hiding in the shade of a tree, looked up at the windows, illuminated by the warm light. To her surprise, John's silhouette flashed in the living room, and Anna's heart clenched painfully. He looked calm, standing leaning on the table, saying something, then laughed. But her attention was caught by another figure, a woman with long brown hair, who walked up to him and put her hand on his shoulder, laughing. Anna felt the ground go from under her feet. Her imagination had repeatedly painted scenes of John with someone else, but seeing it in real life was unbearable. Tears filled her eyes and she turned away, feeling a mixture of pain, jealousy, and bitterness stirring inside. She knew she had no right to be jealous, but she could not shake the feeling that she'd been pushed out of the life they built together. Hardly forcing herself to leave, Anna wandered down the street, barely making her way through her tears. She did not remember how she got home, but when she closed the door behind her, she collapsed on the couch and burst into tears. The tears flowed non-stop, as if trying to wash away the pain and guilt, but instead they left only emptiness. The next day Anna tried to regain at least the illusion of control. She focused on her work, but her thoughts wandered back to the scene at John's house. She realized that she had lost herself long ago in the endless meetings with Mike, in the attempts to forget herself, in the evenings when the silence became deafening. Mike, too, seemed to be beginning to realize that something had changed. When they met that evening, his face was serious, lacking the lightness that was always present in his demeanor. "You do not look like yourself, Anna," he said, lighting a cigarette and looking at her through the puffs of smoke. Did something happen? She knew she could have lied, given a one-word answer and walked away, but she suddenly felt the need to tell the truth. "I saw John yesterday," she admitted, looking away to avoid his gaze. "He is doing well." "Yes? With someone." Mike shrugged, letting out a puff of smoke. "You should have expected that. People have moved on." Those words cut her, and she looked at Mike with hurt and despair. "And you? Do you ever regret that we started dating again?" Mike looked at her in surprise, then grinned as if the question was rhetorical. "Anna, I never regret anything. We both knew what we were getting into." She realized that these meetings with Mike were an empty escape from her own conscience. He was a reminder of her past life, of her mistakes, but he could never give her what she had with John, a love that supported and protected. A few days later, returning home late at night, Anna found her bag ripped open. Puzzled, she searched the apartment, trying to figure out where she might have damaged it. In the kitchen, her gaze fell on the trash can into which she had hastily tossed a package of used condoms after her last encounter with Mike. Her heart skipped a beat and panic gripped her. John knew. She remembered how he'd come by a few days ago to pick up the last remaining items. She'd gone to the bathroom for a few minutes, leaving him alone in the apartment. Perhaps that was when he saw the package and realized what had happened. The discovery flooded her with a wave of shame and horror. Everything she had tried to hide and justify came out. After Anna realized that John had found evidence of her infidelity, the fear she had tried to drown out all these months turned into a rising wave of panic. Her thoughts raced erratically, painting scary pictures in her head of their last meeting and how he may have found out the whole truth without even asking her a single question. Shame seized her with renewed vigor, robbing her of her ability to act. She sat in her dark apartment, feeling cold and empty, as if they had become her constant companions. Her phone, which she had so hoped to hear in anticipation of a call or message from John, was silent. No explanation, rebuke, or attempt at contact, complete silence. John seemed to have disappeared from her life completely and irrevocably, leaving only pain and memories. Anna tried to go about her daily business, but everything in her life seemed fake, as if she were looking at her fate from the outside. Mike still wrote and offered to meet, but Anna avoided him. She realized that these meetings brought her no comfort, but only fueled her inner turmoil. Mike was a reminder of what she had lost, and her betrayal became an invisible barrier that separated her from all the things that used to bring her joy and peace. Several weeks passed. Anna began to notice that her health was failing. She slept poorly, lost her appetite, and struggled to find the energy to go to work. Her coworkers, who were used to seeing her cheerful and energetic, now looked at her with concern. Even Mrs. White, her boss, came to her desk one day and gently asked, "Anna, are you sure you're all right? Maybe you should take a vacation?" Anna nodded, feigning a weak smile that she knew could not fool anyone. "Thank you, Mrs. White, I'll think about it," she replied. But really, she did not care. Vacation, work, it all merged into one meaningless existence. She no longer knew how to escape the darkness that filled her life. One evening, when the city was drowning in gloom and the street lights seemed especially dim, Anna found the strength to leave the house and walk. Her steps were slow, each step echoing heavily in her heart. She moved without purpose, wandering through streets that were once familiar and filled with memories. Every cafe, every turn reminded her of the time she'd been with John, when life had been full and meaningful. Suddenly she found herself outside the house where he now lived. The lights in its windows were on, and shadows moved behind the curtains. Anna's heart clenched painfully. She stood, unable to look away, watching as the same woman with the brown hair appeared in front of the window. She laughed, leaning over to John, who stood next to her looking relaxed and calm. Tears rolled down her cheeks, and she covered her mouth with her hand to suppress a sob. Everything she feared had come true. John had moved on. He was with someone who might be giving him the very love and respect Anna had betrayed. The thought tore at her from the inside out, and the pain in her chest became so intense she thought she might suffocate. Anna turned and walked away, not waiting to be noticed. Her steps grew faster and faster until she was running, feeling the sharpness of the pain turn to despair. She did not know where she was going, but she needed movement to drown out the loud thoughts in her head, if only for a moment. That night, Anna texted John. She sat on her bed with her phone in her hands, her fingers trembling as she typed the words. The message was simple, no excuses or pleas for forgiveness. "I realize it's over. Just wanted to say I'm sorry." There was no reply. The hours dragged on, turning into agonizing days. She tried to imagine how he felt when he found the evidence of her betrayal, how painful it had been for him to leave without a word to her. Perhaps it was the only way for him to preserve his pride and not show her how much he was suffering. Anna tried to find solace in familiar things. Reading books she used to love, watching movies that had once inspired her. But it all seemed empty and meaningless. She walked the streets of the city, sat in parks, watching couples and families who reminded her of what she had lost. One day, after another sleepless night wandering the city, Anna realized she could not live like this anymore. She was consumed by the realization that she had destroyed her life with her own hands and must somehow find a way to heal. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, do not forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.